Hello, how are you? My name is Jorbs. My name's actually Steven, but I go by Jorbs online. And I really enjoy playing Slay the Spire. As you can see here, I have, what is that? 4,300 hours logged on these two accounts. The Twitch account was largely played with a mod that allowed Twitch chat to pick my cards for me. And this is actually missing a lot of my playtime. I have more than 5,000 hours of this game streamed, and I have an awful lot of offline time in it, doing stuff like making a video like this, for example, as well. So, yeah, you could say that I enjoy Slay the Spire. I'm the first person to beat the game at Ascension 20 with the heart killed. Looks like I've streamed this 5,576 hours. I'm the first person in the world to beat the game at Ascension 20 with the heart killed while rotating through the characters, which means I go Ironclad, then Silent, then Defect, and then Watcher. The first person to do that 7 times in a row, 9 times in a row, 11 times in a row, 12 times in a row, 14 times in a row, 15 times in a row, 16 times in a row, and 17 times in a row. So, along with that, I believe I'm the first person to win 10 times in a row with every character. And probably a bunch of other stuff. I don't know. I've been playing this game since before it was released and have generally been among the best players of the game that entire time. So I've achieved a lot of cool stuff in this game. I certainly don't think I'm better than everybody else who plays, but I certainly think that I'm on par with the best players in the world. And one thing that I've actually never done is gotten all the achievements. My main profile is at 96.9%. I don't have the run with 5 or fewer cards in my deck, and I don't have one other thing. I don't even remember what it is, but I don't have it, I'm pretty sure. So what I thought would be fun, so you could get to know me, so I could have some fun, so I could teach some newer players how to play the game, was I thought I could make a series where I make a new save slot, call this How to Win at Slay the Spire, and show you how I would go about starting the game out with a completely new account. We're going to be playing Ironclad. I don't have the other characters unlocked yet, and we're just going to be jamming and seeing what happens. So yeah, if that sounds good to you, it sounds good to me. Let's do it. The Ironclad. I'm going to be trying to explain my thought processes as we go through this, but unfortunately there's a lot that I cannot communicate to somebody who's new to the game about how over 5,000 hours of streaming this game has taught me to play. So I'm just going to do my best, all right? First thing we do as we start a run is we take a look at the information that we have. We have this map, which shows us that we're fighting Guardian. The different act bosses have different icons, and shows us all these paths which are available. A really big thing to pay attention to as you're looking at paths is what path could give you the most strength possible. Things that will give you the most strength possible are elite fights. These floors give you an increased chance of rare cards and uncommon cards. They give you a relic. They give you a good chunk of gold. You get a chance at a potion. And late act stores are also a pretty big deal. Once you've had enough time to save up some gold, getting a shop before you go into the boss fight is really nice. Often, your goal in Act 1 is just going to be to think about how to survive the Act 1 boss. I'm talking about playing on Ascension 20, so on Ascension 0, you might be able to just cruise through the Act 1 boss most of the time. But thinking about the game from the perspective of an Ascension 20 player, which is what I'm going to be doing throughout this series, the Act 1 boss is formidable. It's one of the first main ways that you could die. And so often a huge priority of Act 1 is getting as strong as possible by this floor so that you can win that fight. Looking at this act, I would say that some path like this one maybe. Although I don't really want that store there because I don't have enough gold yet, so maybe this one. This path might be a good way to get as strong as possible. Maybe go here for 2 campfires for upgrades instead of a shop. How strong upgrades are is variable. How strong everything is variable in this game. You have to constantly be understanding how all the different things connect to each other and making the most of what you have available to you to try to put together a deck that does really well. And sometimes you might get to a point where you're like, well, I know going to an elite would get me tons of stuff, but actually what I really need is a card remove, so I'm just going to go to a shop and spend 175 gold on my 5th card remove of the run, and actually that's going to be the right play. So sometimes you can also stop thinking about which floor generally is the strongest and start thinking about what does my deck actually just need right now. I don't know what to do on this path, for what it's worth. The other part of looking at your path is you don't just want to get as strong as possible, you'd also like not to die. Because going through an elite fight, you expect this to deal you some damage, right? The elite's going to attack you for more than most of the hallway fights would. And you only have so much health. So you also have to consider, like, if you really get out of line, you may just die before you even get to the boss. So don't do that. The more you play, the more clear an idea you have of how well your deck in the current moment can line up against all the hallway fights and elite fights you might encounter. And you can get a really good sense of, like, 15 health right now is enough to be fighting an elite, or maybe at another time, actually I have 50 health, 5-0, and that's still not enough to risk running into Gremlin Knob who could kill me. You just, over time, you get a good sense for how this all works. I actually don't have a whale bonus right now because it's my first run ever. Let's go this way. It's fine. I don't think I'd take that path on Ascension 20, but this isn't Ascension 20. Some tutorialized stuff. I'm going to turn on fast mode. I'm going to turn off screen shake. I'm going to turn on these things. And I'm going to say that's good. Let's go. All right. One thing that new players often get hung up on in trying to understand how to play Slay the Spire better is they think a lot about the macro level decision making. Should I build a block deck? Should I build a perfected strike deck? Stuff like that. And actually a huge amount of Slay the Spire is... Ooh, am I going perfected strike? Take a perfected strike, why not? A huge amount of Slay the Spire is actually just playing these fights right, which is really hard, believe it or not. These fights are very complex. If you build an AI that tries to solve these fights for you, it will take like 3 days of computation power to solve a fight that's relatively easy. Like one of those fights, for example, where I just have basically the starter deck against a starter enemy. And if you imagine what it's like when you have 35 cards and 25 different relics and 3 potions you can use against like the awakened one where there are 3 enemies and one of them comes back and one has a special power, and like there's a lot of stuff going on. So paying attention to how you're playing these fights, I'm not going to dwell on it a ton in this video. I think I'm just going to focus mostly on the macro stuff. But paying attention to how you're playing fights is a pretty big deal. Take a twin strike here. So you may have noticed I took perfected strike. I've taken a twin strike. So I have this deck where strikes do a lot of damage. And you might be thinking, oh, he's going to take like every perfected strike and go from there and just win the entire run. And that's actually exactly the opposite of what I'm going to do. In Slay the Spire, an important thing to do often is to have balance in your deck. So you want to make your deck better at attacking. You also want to make it better at blocking. You want to make it better at drawing cards. You want to make it better at generating energy. You want to make it better at selecting which cards to play, by which I mean like you want it to be able to draw a hand of 10 cards and play the best 3 for the turn right now, instead of drawing a hand of 3 cards and having to play like 3 defends on a turn where you really needed to kill something with 6 health left. So if I just kept on dumping perfected strikes into this deck, I'd be like overcompensating for a problem that I've largely already solved. With just these 2 cards, I already have enough damage for basically this entire act. So why add more relatively weak common attacks to my deck when I could instead start thinking about how to get better at blocking for fights that I need to block in and things like that? This one seems like a pretty easy choice. In general, I would encourage you to avoid taking curses from events. As like a general observation, curses in events are, I think, quite a lot worse than most beginning players think they are. Which is not to say that you can never take a curse from an event, but I've had a lot of people express surprise at how much I value avoiding curses. And this kind of goes back to the idea of not putting a common attack into the deck as well. The better you get at the game, the more you start to recognize that you can get your deck to a point where it's doing enough with fewer and fewer cards. And by doing that, when you find really strong cards later, or when your deck starts to want to do something else, like perhaps combo poison with Catalyst if you're silent, the fact that you only have like 13 cards in your deck to start with instead of 18 cards in your deck just makes it way easier to draw those strong cards or do that strong thing later on in the run. I'm going to comment on my card reward here, because I think this one may be surprising. I don't actually know which cards I don't have unlocked. I know Exhume isn't unlocked yet. I'm not sure if Offering... I think Offering isn't unlocked yet either. Huh. I was going to take Dark Embrace, which I thought might be surprising to people since I don't have a card that exhausts in my entire deck. But the thing is that Ironclad has like a third of his cards say exhaust on them in some way, either that the card itself exhausts or that it makes you exhaust a different card or that it does something when a card exhausts. The thing is, I don't actually think many of those cards are unlocked. So actually I think that would just be wrong. I'm going to take the Flame Barrier instead, which is a great block card. So now my deck, which was already pretty decent at dealing damage, is also pretty good at blocking. I haven't gotten a potion yet, which is unlucky. My chance of getting a potion from this fight is very high, because the longer you go without getting a potion, the higher and higher your chance of receiving a potion the next fight gets. And as you can see there, I got like an okay draw order in this fight. It wasn't perfect, but it was like okay. And I just have enough damage to kill Gremlin up before I get hit for a large amount. So I didn't need to put more like perfected strikes and stuff into my deck. My deck does exactly what I want it to right now without me doing that. I have a bag of preparation, so now I draw an additional 2 cards at the start of a fight, which is awesome. And I think I'm going to take an Inflame. Inflame's kind of like my first scaling card. And when I say scaling, what I mean by that is it's a card that I can play that will make my deck stronger in future turns. If you're coming to Slay the Spire from a game like Magic the Gathering or Hearthstone, those games sort of have built-in scaling in them. In Magic the Gathering, you have your land drops, and those are sort of like built-in scaling. It's, I think, intuitive to any Magic player that at least for the first few turns of the game, you want to be making a land drop every turn, because that'll let you play better and better power, or better and better cards, because you have enough mana to afford them. And in Hearthstone, if you're coming from a game like Hearthstone or Legends of Runeterra or whatever, your energy or mana or whatever other spellcasting resource they have in that game will tick up naturally for you every turn. So on turn 1, you have 1. By the time you get to turn 5, you have 5, and you can play far better cards. But in Slay the Spire, that isn't true. In Slay the Spire, you have the same amount of energy on turn 1 and turn 5, unless you do something about it. And so in Slay the Spire, for longer fights, it can be very valuable to have cards like Inflame, where if I play this on turn 1, well, on turn 2, I'm going to be stronger than I was on turn 1. And that's the general idea behind scaling cards. Inflame's like an okay one. I wouldn't say it's the best one ever, but it's fine. And I'm going to add it to the deck. All right, let's go. If you wanted to make a very simple AI that tried to approximate how I'm playing these fights, what I'm trying to do is take as little damage as possible every turn, primarily, and then deal damage next. The actual thing I'm doing is much more complicated. I'm actually in full trying to think of the entire fight and trying to work out how to navigate through the entire thing while taking the least damage possible, but, you know, if you were starting with an AI that was very simple, that would be an okay way to do it. Shockwave is a cool card. It's okay at this point in the run. Weak and Vulnerable both get better and better as the run goes on because they're percentage multipliers. So if an enemy is attacking you for more, Weak is going to reduce that incoming damage by more. If you're dealing damage to an enemy and you're hitting it harder, Vulnerable is going to make you hit it even harder as you get better and better at dealing damage. Shockwave is also good against multiple enemies, which is something that we're not very good at dealing with multiple enemies yet. Um, you can think of this as a type of scaling. It's temporary scaling because it only lasts for 3 turns, but in a lot of fights, 3 turns is either the entire fight or close to the entire fight, so that'll often be okay. This is the first time I really don't know what to do on a turn. I think that Inflame Bash is probably right, and this sets us up for some really nice Twin Strike action on turn 2, hopefully. This enemy will split when I put it on 32 health. Since it's not doing anything particularly threatening this turn, like I could put it to 10 and it would split at 10, but I think I'll wait. I could go either way on that one. I think that one's kind of close. In this case, it looks like it paid off to wait. I am at full health, so, you know, these decisions are going fine. None of it has mattered all that much, ultimately. True Grit, Clothesline, Shrug It Off. I don't have to be taking a card from every card award. I can absolutely skip. I'm just being offered cards that are, like, sort of good enough to win runs at this difficulty, so why not take them? I've actually, like, the card awards this act have genuinely been quite good. I think at Ascension 20 I would also have quite a lot of cards in my deck right now. If you get offered good cards, you might as well take them, right? I think here I can go ahead and skip, though. Perhaps True Grit's a nice card. It would be a good way to show you the power of Exhaust. Someone new to the game often will identify Exhaust as a drawback, but in fact, it's very, very powerful to be able to get rid of cards in your deck for the rest of the fight. You can get your deck down to just your best cards and not have to worry about drawing your strikes and defends anymore. I don't know what's in the card pool. I'm going to take True Grit. I don't know whether Burning Pact is in the card pool or not. If it is, maybe I didn't need a True Grit, but if it isn't, True Grit seems nice to have. I have an Nunchaku now. Nunchaku is interesting to note because it's a relic which has a persistent state between fights. So every time I play 10 attacks, I gain an energy, which is cool. That's great. We like gaining energy. We like playing attacks. The interesting thing with Nunchaku is that if we're at 9 attacks played and we end the fight, it will remember that we're at 9 attacks played going into the next fight. And there are a lot of relics like this in the game. I called them a relic with a persistent count or something like that. I don't know. I don't remember. They sort of like have a memory of what's going on with them. And so when I have Nunchaku, I actually want to be trying to engineer fights such that I end the fight with it on 9. Which is going to be impossible to do here, because I don't have ways to deal damage other than to play attacks, unfortunately. And I'm not going to be able to play 10 attacks to get it back to 9. But yeah, that's like the general idea. Should be able to get it to 3, which is closer to proccing next fight than 0 at least. The Frozen Egg, whenever we get a power, it'll automatically be upgraded. That's kind of cool. I don't think I have enough energy for the Seeing Red. I didn't know that Seeing Red was in the card pool. Seeing that Seeing Red exists in my card pool sort of makes me wish that I'd taken the Dark Embrace. That's okay. I think what I'm going to do is upgrade my Bash and my Shockwave maybe, or maybe my Shockwave and my Inflame, something like that. Let's just get some upgraded cards in the deck and head on into Act 2 here. I don't think the Guardian fight will be very difficult. One thing I haven't noted yet is hallway fights. The first 2 hallway fights of every act and the first 3 hallway fights of Act 1. And that could be like 1, 2, 3, or it could be 1, 2, 3. Or this could be a hallway fight event and it could be 1, 2, 3. They're all from an easy fight pool. And then after that, the acts all have hard fight pools, which are different. And so in Act 1, your first 3 hallway fights are generally more desirable than your other hallway fights because they're much easier. Also, at the start of the run, you have like a very bad deck, and so getting a card reward from a hallway fight just to get something in your deck is pretty nice. Whereas by the time that you're this far into the act, like getting another card reward is much less of a big deal. Look at all the cards I've already added. It just doesn't make as much of a difference to my deck proportionally. Meanwhile, events tend to have better events available after the 6th floor of an act. So this event couldn't spawn elite type event fights for me, whereas this one, actually, there are a couple of events that are basically like fighting. They're basically like fighting another elite. Sorry, I can't speak. Which can spawn now because we're in the second half of the act. So I actually got one there. Yeah. This is more or less just another elite fight. It's just the elite that we fought all over again. So, yeah, what I was doing with that explanation was trying to explain to you why I was going to click on an event rather than a hallway fight. In this situation, I felt like it was correct. I have a lot of health still. I'm used to playing at Ascension 20, where enemies are dealing a lot more damage and you actually start with quite a lot less health, so I'm definitely feeling healthy enough to fight another elite right now. Anyway, we're vibing. I have successfully made Nunchaku generate me an energy, unfortunately on a turn where there was nothing to do with it, but that's no problem. It's not like it was a mistake to play my attacks that turn or anything. Sometimes Nunchaku will miss, I guess. This is a bit of a choice. I think that our deck is strong enough that we don't have to play the Perfected Strike. Didn't have enough energy to do so while blocking, so at least not while blocking enough. And yeah, it turned out that we killed easily anyway. A Demon Form Plus. That'll win the run. Demon Form Plus is, if you need to scale your deck to be able to kill things and you need to do it with one card and you're not interested in like thinking any harder than that, Demon Form Plus does do that thing. Unfortunately, as a solution to your issues with scaling, it's not the best option. Like, there are other ways you can do this that are faster and cost less energy, basically. That being said, it's Ascension 0. I don't hate taking Combust Plus here at all, because I don't really have any area of effect damage yet. So I could do that instead. I think that taking in Combust is actually a lot more instructive, so I'm going to take Combust instead. The idea here is that, like, a new player might think, oh, I already have an Inflame, now I'm being offered a Demon Form, I'm going to make a Strength deck. And that's how I'll win. And that's not like a completely ludicrous way to think about what you're doing, but it also doesn't really mean anything. What is a Strength deck? What is that? There's no enemy in the game that, like, politely asks you whether you have a lot of strength, and if you do, then you win the fight, and if you don't, you lose the fight. Enemies just have a certain amount of health. And just because I have an Inflame in my deck doesn't mean that Combust doesn't deal. It just dealt 35 damage for 1 energy over the course of 2 turns, right? Combust massively outperformed what Demon Form could have done in that fight, and there will be many fights going forward where Combust is just going to be a much more relevant card than Demon Form. So the idea here is to really wrap your head around the idea that you are building a deck. Unlike in constructed formats in Hearthstone, where you're building an entire deck which will be played against a certain metagame, or unlike in a limited event in Magic the Gathering, where you might be drafting a deck and over time what your deck is changes, but you don't actually have to play with it until you've finished drafting all the cards. In Slay the Spire, you not only have to play the deck constantly while you're in the process of drafting, which is like, taking Demon Form right now wouldn't be that great because we don't have enough energy to put it in play easily, and we don't have much of a payoff for having lots of strength, for example. So later it might be great, but right now it isn't great. You have to play it while you're in the process of building it, and you have to play it against many, many different types of enemies. Those lice only had 14 HP, and there were 3 of them. In a couple of floors, I'm going to fight against Guardian, who's going to have 200 HP, and there'll just be 1 Guardian. So because of that, you shouldn't be thinking about, like, I'm going to build a certain type of deck, and then by the end of the run, that's your deck. You should be thinking instead, like, what is my deck weak to right now? How do I round out its matchup against low HP mob of enemies, like 5 enemies at once, but they all have 10 health, sorts of things? How does it deal with an enemy with 300 health right now? Can it block? Can it deal damage? Are there ways to open myself up to have the potential to scale it a lot later in a way that doesn't hinder it very much right now? So like taking a Burning Pact, for example, which is a draw card which exhausts one of the cards in my deck. Well, that makes it easier to draw a demon form quickly if I find a demon form later. It also makes it easier to exhaust bad cards in my deck to win with like iterative playing of, I don't know, even just Flame Barrier. Even if I just play Flame Barrier and it's upgraded every turn, that can be really strong. So anyway, these are all my ideas. I'm just talking. I think I will upgrade Flame Barrier actually. This upgrade's kind of sweet. Blocks for a lot more. It deals damage as well. All lovely stuff. Guardian actually has 240 HP. How is that even allowed? I don't even know. I wasn't even counting the 2 damage that Combust dealt to me when I said how much damage it had dealt. I actually misplayed there, I think. Yeah, I definitely misplayed there. So there you go. Even after 6,000 hours and playing the game at supposedly a high level, I just dropped 6 damage by playing my attacks in the wrong order and not recognizing that Nunchaku was going to proc. And yeah, that happened. It's easy to overlook things in Slay the Spire though. And I'm not gonna like beat myself up over that. I'm talking to you, I'm vibing, I'm trying to explain something else. Stuff like that will happen, and it will happen somewhat regularly actually. There isn't too much play to my deck right now. In general against Guardian, your deck wants to be more block heavy because while Guardian is in the Thorny stats, it will deal damage to you when you attack it. So in general, when I draw True Grit, I'm going to try to exhaust the worst attack card in my hand to adjust my deck to be more appropriate for the end of the fight. But overall, this is just a fairly easy win. Here, we were able to play Shockwave. Shockwave's exhausts, so I don't have to worry about drawing that anymore, which is like arguably a good thing. Given how much trouble I was having actually playing the card, it seems nice to not have to draw it anymore. I don't know if people are watching this and thinking, oh, this is a really close fight. I have played a lot of this game, and so it's pretty clear to me that we're winning that fight easily. But 15 health is like fairly low, and this is one of the ways in which someone with a lot of experience in the game is going to outperform someone with less experience in the game, is that they're going to be able to identify, I don't need to worry about resting before this fight, I have enough health. I don't have to use potions in this fight, I can solve the fight without using potions. I walked into that fight, I got like semi-low, I guess, but I still have 3 potions, and I was able to hold on to them, so I have them next act, and ended up killing the boss easily. Oh, Offering does exist. Okay. I was wondering if Offering existed earlier. Yeah, this card's really, really, really strong, so I'm going to take it. Fire is also pretty strong. It should just be Offering. Offering does something that I call acceleration. So 4 very important things to do in Slay the Spire are attack, defend, scale. And I think I've talked about all 3 of these already. And then also accelerate. And what accelerating means is letting you do whichever of those 3 previous things you needed to do faster. And Offering does that. So in a fight where I need to attack, Offering draws me my attacks and lets me play them. In a fight where I need to block, well, it draws me my block cards too and lets me play them. If I need to scale, if I need to get my Inflame into play quickly or my Combust into play quickly, it does that too. Offering's just very, very, very strong. And Runic Pyramid is generally, I would say, considered the best boss relic in the game. So I'll probably be taking that. I will note that the reason that Runic Pyramid is considered the best boss relic in the game is that it's so good at letting you play the right card on the turn for it. And at Ascension 0, if you're in the mindset that you're building a strength deck or something like that, that element of the game isn't really happening yet. If your deck is just like, I'm going to very linearly build a deck which gains strength and plays strength scaling attacks like Sword Boomerang and Heavy Blade, then your strategy is very linear, and it's not flexible in a way that a deck with like Flame Barrier and Combust and Offering and Perfected Strike and Inflame might be, where my deck has a lot of very different cards in it. And so when it gets attacked for a lot, it wants to play Flame Barrier. When it isn't being attacked for a lot, if it needs to kill things quickly, it would like to play Perfected Strike and maybe Combust. If it needs to get stronger for later turns, it would like to play Inflame or maybe Shockwave. So my deck wants to do very different things depending on what the enemy is doing. And that's why Runic Pyramid is so strong, is that it lets me play those situationally powerful cards on the appropriate turns for them. So we take Runic Pyramid. I'm not even going to talk about the other relics. I think we can cruise through this run pretty quickly from now on, probably. I'm not going to talk as much about this. I'm just gonna, like, let's just vibe and enjoy the rest of the run, yeah? The Chosen. I'm sure I'll end up talking a lot anyway. I mean, there's so much to talk about in Slay the Spire. Here I'm gonna try to not play Offering this fight just to save health. It does cost me health to play it, but I don't have to play it if I don't want to, so. Why deal yourself damage when you don't need to deal yourself damage? And you might think, well, why do you have Offering in your deck then? And the answer is, well, when I do need to play it, it will save me a lot of health, potentially. Take a Dropkick. Dropkick opens up the possibility of actually building an infinite here. If I can exhaust lots of cards. Oh, look at how good Flame Barrier is this turn. That's brutal. If I can exhaust a lot of cards and just play a Dropkick, it costs 1, but it generates 1, and it is a card that I have to play, but it draws another card. So if I have 2 Dropkicks, I can play 1, draw the other one, play the other one, draw the first one, and on and on and on. Actually, 1 I forgot about Nunchaku again. Oh, Burning Pact does exist. All right. We're going to end up with some sort of infinite here, I think. Feel No Pain plus Sundial. Sorry, what was I saying? I just got very distracted by how broken my deck has just become. One of the cool things about having played tons and tons of Slay the Spire is that you start to recognize all these different broken things that you can do that will win you the run. And yeah, I have found some of those. You don't have to be like, there are 3 different types of decks I can build. Which of the 3 types of decks I can build should I build this run? You can be like, there are so many different combinations of cards that can beat the enemies. Which ones can I find right now? That's a much more enjoyable way to play the game, in my opinion. Cat. This is Zephyr. This is a pretty dangerous hallway fight at High Ascension. My deck's strong enough that I'd be able to handle it just fine at High Ascension too, but like, it's sort of gnarly. Disarm Plus is such a strong card, worth taking over Dropkick. I don't actually need double Dropkick because I have a Sundial, so now just the act of shuffling my cards ends up being valuable. Zephyr was here because the robot was about to feed him, I think, and now the robot has fed him, so he's leaving. I don't know why he thinks I have anything to do with that. He's right, of course, I do feed the robot, but this is also one of the hardest hallway fights in the game usually. At High Ascension, the Avocado will always make you frail on turn 1, which is pretty nasty. Sorry, the shelled parasite, sorry. Sorry. It's not an avocado at all, right? Shockwave is doing a good job of debuffing these for a while he gets set up. And now that I'm all set up, this is disarmed. I have a bunch of extra energy from Sundial. I can get around to killing them. Sundial's a pretty important relic to be setting up, so I'm going to try to leave each fight with this at 2 charges so that I can get my extra energy relatively quickly in the next fight. You can see it's already going off pretty rapidly. With Burning Pact and True Grit, I'm able to get rid of a lot of cards. If I were playing at High Ascension, the run would look very similar to this. One of the big differences, I think, would be, got 9 and 2 on these, would be that I wouldn't have been able to do this all so easily. Looks very easy the way that I'm doing it right now. I haven't like used a potion yet, for example. Okay, Gremlin Leader, I think you got me. Gonna take a bit of damage here. Gremlin Leader always attacks if there are 2 minions summoned, so if you can kill one of the minions, or ideally both of the minions, on turn 1, if you're not getting attacked turn 1, you can prevent yourself from being attacked turn 2. But obviously I missed out on that. So here we are getting attacked. But at low ascension, all of the numbers are sort of lower than they would be otherwise, so I'm not getting attacked for too much. At high ascension, Gremlin Leader would have 2 more strength right now. This is a fight that I took Combust for, but my deck is actually strong enough that I don't need to use it, I don't think. I probably will end up using it, I'm just sort of curious how far I can get. How far can I push it before I need to actually do that? Yeah, it looks like I don't need to use it at all, because I'll be infinite in another couple of turns, I think. Just exhausting lots of cards. And my infinite here is going to start out. Well, actually, I missed it this turn. I didn't draw Burning Pact. Uh-oh. Well, I could use a potion, or I could just not use a potion and take a bit more damage. It's fine. I was going to say that my infinite was going to start out with just Burning Pact to shrug it off, but I guess I have enough energy to play the bash. So here if I play Shrug, it does cost me an energy, but it puts another charge on Sundial, and since Dropkick costs me nothing, it costs me 1.5 energy to get 2 energy from Sundial while I'm drawing cards, so this is just infinite damage and block. This and other combos like it are very common things that you'll learn as you play more of the game. I'm not going to bother putting Sundial on 9, or Nunchaku on 9 rather. I could have there, I believe, but I'm just not going to bother. Could have played attacks on the other minions to increase it. Take another True Grit. I don't really see why not, given that at the moment I'm largely just exhausting my deck down to an infinite, and this is a card that can exhaust a card, so it will increase my speed at doing that. This is a card remove. Card removes are great right now for probably fairly obvious reasons. Pocket Watch is a powerful card. I'm going to upgrade Shockwave because I'm noticing that fights are going a little bit longer than it's lasting for. Second Wind is very, very, very strong here. Because Second Wind doesn't just exhaust 1 card, that exhausts a lot of cards. In general, at this point in the run, I am choosing to go to question marks a lot, and the reason for that is that the run will end faster if I don't have to play hallway fights. Like, I'm just in such a strong position in the run that that seems like the appropriate way to play to me. I don't think there's any possibility of losing anymore. So I want to keep Shrug, I guess. Pocket Watch tends not to do very well with Runic Pyramid because you can only have 10 cards in hand at the same time. But on this turn exactly, maybe it's doing something good? Not really. Yeah, it mostly doesn't do anything here, I think. All right. Usually if I were like streaming this game, I would chat with people who were watching while this was going on, but I'm recording a YouTube video, so it's fun. You can press the keys on your keyboard to select cards in hand. So I'm pressing the 8 button over and over again. These aren't like terrible cards or anything, I just don't need them. And given that my goal is to get rid of all the cards in my deck as quickly as possible, adding more cards to my deck has a obvious downside in the service of that goal. I could upgrade Dropkick to make it take less plays to kill enemies, but yeah. I'm okay with not doing that. There's no problem carrying... Sorry. There's no reason to care about my health in this fight because I get a full heal at the end of the act. At higher ascension, you don't actually full heal at the end of the act. So in a situation like this, every point of health would still matter. I'd only heal back 3/4 of my missing health. But yeah, at low ascension, it's no big deal. In fact, we're at no ascension right now. Some of you might be watching and not even know what ascension is. It's kind of interesting. Shoop-de-doop-de-doo. Well. So I went to Portland over the weekend, which was really fun. I saw Joe Pera live. Did some alternative stand-up comedy. It was enjoyable. Not sure about the guy who opened for him. I mean, he was fun. I think he was there to like get everyone hyped up a little bit, maybe. Whatever, it's neither here nor there. They kept on talking about how there was a 12-year-old in the front row, and I don't know if there was actually a 12-year-old in the front row. A lot of their jokes were not appropriate for children. I think they might have just been saying there was a 12-year-old in the front row to be funny. But maybe there was a 12-year-old in the front row. Who could say? What else is new in the world? Summer's almost over. It's kind of nice. Not generally a huge fan of summer. It gets too hot. But I also don't like winter, so like I'm very much like in between those things sort of guy. This really is just me playing the same card over and over again until the enemy dies. That's like really what is happening. Wait, Pocket Watch says we played 68 cards that turn, so way to go us. Fiendfire is very good at setting up our infinite. Impervious is excellent at stalling for a turn. We could take either. I will take... Yeah, I'll take Impervious. So I'm not going to take Velvet Choker, which would make it so I cannot play more than 6 cards per turn. That seems bad with how I'm winning. Runic Dome makes it so we can no longer see enemy intents. Runic Cube, whenever we lose HP, we draw a card. I'm going to take Runic Dome. It's correct. A lot of people don't enjoy playing with Runic Dome. Just like sort of stressful, and especially if you're a new player and you don't know what the enemies do, it takes away your ability to find that out. And it might surprise you to hear that, like, even someone who's very experienced with the game still experiences a significant downside from Runic Dome. Because a lot of these enemies have, like, a lot of coin flips in their AI in deciding what they're doing. And I don't know what the coin flipped. Because I'm not omniscient. That said, this deck doesn't really care very much what the enemies are doing. Like, this deck is just going to make a lot of block and then exhaust cards until it's infinite, and what the enemies are doing is completely irrelevant. It's not really trying to kill them before it's infinite all that much. So in this situation, I think that Runic Dome has very, very, very limited drawback, and there's just not much reason not to be taking it. I'm pretty sure that's fine. Let's try to get Sundial back on 2. There's a weird interaction. You don't have to try to remember this. If you play enough with infinites, you'll just like sort of innately understand it. The Burning Pact Plus that I'm playing right now, this card draws 3 cards. It's going to shuffle twice. And the reason for that is the exact situation we're in, where there are cards in my discard pile, but as I'm drawing, I'm going to run out of cards in the discard pile to draw. Because what's going to happen is when it starts drawing, it will shuffle my discard pile into my draw pile. That will count as 1 shuffle. And it will draw a card, and it will run out of cards in my draw pile to draw, and it will try to shuffle my discard pile into my draw pile again. So we'll do that twice. In order for this to happen, I need to have enough space in my hand to draw that many cards, and I mean, it doesn't matter. I need to be drawing more cards than there are on my discard pile. I just realized that most people who are watching this who are completely new to the game are like, probably like falling asleep listening to me explain that, so sorry about that, I apologize. There's just no reason for Whirlwind Plus, I don't need it. Dark Shackles is kinda cool, I'm not sure I need it. There are 2 of them. There's a Madness. Madness is kinda cool, I also don't need that. I think I just skip all of these. Now that I'm in a situation where I know how I'm winning, and I am consistently winning by doing it, there's no reason really to put more things in the way of me achieving my goal. I want to remove cards, I want to put cards in my deck that accelerate my ability to do what I'm doing. I don't really want to take a mediocre card. It's just sort of like, okay. Like, I don't want to take a Flame Barrier Plus anymore. In Act 1, taking a Flame Barrier Plus made a lot of sense. It was just like a good card that was worth playing a lot of the time. Now that I am where I am, my deck wins a certain way, and do so very consistently, there isn't much reason to think about doing anything else. I just want to make it as good as possible at doing the thing that it does. One thing you may notice is that, okay, so I notice that when people post their run histories, even of like Ascension 20 runs, they're often like 20 minutes long. And it blows my mind. Because even if I was playing extremely quickly, not thinking about any of my turns, and not explaining what I was doing, I could almost never finish a run at Ascension 20 that quickly. And I don't think the reason is because I'm a slow player. I think the reason is because I am trying to make a deck that is more complicated. Like, I just have a lot of different cards that do different things, and it's all weird. And so I'm not going to like ever build a deck that's like on turn 1 it just plays Whirlwind and then it wins. Not because such a deck would be bad, but because the path to get to that deck requires me to just like skip a lot of other things along the way, which would be worth taking when I'm offered them. I'm not saying that's never happened. I have sometimes ended up with decks that just play Whirlwind and kill everything, but it doesn't happen often. And so I'm not intending to submit this as like a speed run of the fastest Ascension to Ascension 20 ever completed or anything like that. I'm just hoping to show you some relatively good play of Slay the Spire to give you a sense of like what you can do if you sit down and try to get good at this game. My deck has some wounds in it because these daggers give you wounds. Kind of rude. Don't think it'll be a huge deal, but keep that in mind. This is one of the fights that Combust is particularly good in. I wouldn't say that I've needed it, but certainly when I took it, one of the reasons for taking it was so that I would have it against Reptomancer. As the run's developed, it just hasn't really mattered. And probably most of the time at this difficulty level, the run will develop in a way where it doesn't really matter, but as you get into higher Ascension, having a Combust in your deck for the Reptomancer fight is commonly a really nice thing to be able to lean on. You can certainly be in situations where your deck is just strong enough that you don't need to do something like that as well. Just the general thing that your deck does already beats Reptomancer. Ironclad's a pretty cool relic. Oh, am I going to... I guess I'll kill Transient. Isn't that actually... I think that's an achievement, actually. So this will be the first achievement of the save file, killing Transient. It'll take a little while. I'm going to have to look up what the achievements are if I want to get them all. And I would like to get them all. See how Second Wind is just like the turn after I play it, I'm infinite basically, because it just takes so many cards out of my deck. Okay. This will actually take a long time. If I were editing these, I would cut this out, but you know, I'm not going to do that. What should we do instead? Maybe I can tell you more about Second Wind. So Ironclad's ability to exhaust cards to set up combos like what I'm doing right now is very powerful. It's like often the way that is most easy to win the run, and if your desire is to win the run pretty much every way doing something like this, you won't you will still be able to like reach Ascension 20 doing that. You won't be playing the best Ironclad possible, but you'll succeed a lot more than you might think at first. Cards like Burning Pact, this card's so good at doing what I'm doing right now because it draws so many cards and gets one of the cards of the deck out of the way to get toward my combo. I wouldn't be able to do what I'm doing exactly if I didn't have Sundial, but like I could buy a Finesse or a Flash of Steel at a shop to complement my Dropkick. I could get a, what's it called? Dual Wield to make another Dropkick, stuff like that. So doing that sort of thing is very, very good on Ironclad. And because of that, Second Wind is a very powerful card. Now, that said, if I only draw 5 cards a turn, Second Wind is nowhere near as exciting. Second Wind is particularly exciting here because I, with Runic Pyramid, can fill my hand, and then Second Wind can get rid of a lot of chaff all at once. Another way that Second Wind ends up not being anywhere near as valuable is if I have Corruption. Corruption is probably Ironclad's most powerful card. It's a power that makes it so every time I play a skill, it exhausts itself. so I only get to play my skills once. But they all cost 0. And instead of but, I should probably say and. They all cost 0. And so corruption lets you do much the same thing, where you just get rid of all your skills, because when you play them, they exhaust. And they happen to all cost 0, so that's pretty sweet. Now, this infinite wouldn't work with corruption because I'm playing Shrug It Off over and over again, and Shrug It Off is a skill, so I'd only be able to play it once. So for this infinite in particular, Second Wind allows the infinite to succeed where corruption wouldn't. But there are lots of other infinites where that isn't the case. And there are many, many ways, which I'm sure we'll see tons of as I get Ironclad up to Ascension 20, to win runs without setting up an infinite as well. And those can involve exhaust too. Like the power I have in play here, Feel No Pain, which gives me 4 block every time I exhaust the card. That card is great at giving me some defense as I set up the infinite, but it would also be great at being basically the only source of block that I needed if my deck was like 40 cards or something like that. And I would just be like using True Grits and Burning Pacts, and Feel No Pain would be making, I don't know, 16 or 20 block per turn. And that may be all that I need to survive any fight in the game. So, yeah, there are lots of ways that exhaust can work on Ironclad, and it tends to be very, very strong. I think that people generally identify like block and attack as the 2 types of Ironclad. And while it is true that Ironclad can generate lots of block and can also play lots of attacks, I would generally say that Ironclad's draw and exhaust are the strong things. I would say that this is kind of like Ironclad's draw, and there are lots of ways that Ironclad can actually not be fully infinite, but still be like drawing a Blood for Blood, which costs 0 and deals 33 damage every time you draw it, and drawing that card like 4 times a turn and have that be an incredible amount of damage dealt. There are also tons of ways that Ironclad can benefit immensely from exhaust and win runs off exhaust. Alright, I do not have Nunchuck on the right number, but we have Sundial on 2, and we killed Transient, which I believe is an achievement for the account. I don't know. I didn't get an achievement pop up, I guess because I already have that achievement, huh? Oh my god, a note for yourself exists. I had forgotten this event existed. Receive Iron Wave and store an Offering Plus. I absolutely do not need Offering Plus to win this run. That's a very... that's funny. I would have been able to bottle Offering Plus. Oh well. It's definitely correct to go to this elite just to like get a bit stronger. Actually, it's not even correct to. I take it back. It's unnecessary to go to that elite to get a little bit stronger. So I won't. What I was going to say is that I'm not going to because I want to get out of the fight as quickly as I can, but actually just straight up don't think it's correct to because I don't need to. Isn't incorrect to either. Like I could do that and it would be fine. But given that I don't need to, I don't need to pretend that I'm making a mistake by not doing it. If we're picking between ways to win the run 100% of the time, none of them are necessarily better than the others. It's just a matter of what we want to do at that point. Ideally, most of the time when playing Slay the Spire, it's more fun if you're not picking between different ways to win the run 100% of the time. If you're like picking between ways to win the run like 55% of the time and 60% of the time and trying to identify which one is which, that's more what's fun in Slay the Spire. But I guess it's nice to have a very strong deck every now and then for sure. The joys of Ascension 0, huh? I haven't played less than Ascension 20 for a very long time. And the reason for that is that I really value Slay the Spire's ability to give me those closer decisions, where which option I pick really makes a huge difference in deciding whether I win or lose the run. And at Ascension 0, you just don't get that many of those, unfortunately. Perfected Strike is gone. So when I took the Perfected Strike initially, you might have been thinking, oh, Perfected Strike deck. But like, if you look at where we are now, I removed the Perfected Strike from my deck. I don't miss it. It wasn't particularly relevant at any time in the game other than to give me a little bit of extra damage in Act 1, which like just gave me as much damage as I needed in Act 1 basically, and that was awesome. Be a little bit careful because it's actually hard to make this vulnerable. Dropkick needs enemies to be vulnerable for it to work. And Spheric Guardian has an artifact charge, but I'll get there eventually. There you go. Oh, it's only one artifact charge. Because of Ascension 0, I guess. On Ascension 20, it's 3 artifact charges. Oh, it's 2 artifact charges. I have a red mask. Okay, I worked it out. Got there eventually. I'm passing on playing cards when I could play cards sometimes here because I want Pocket Watch to proc. Pocket Watch is one of the strongest relics in the entire game. I would like it to draw me 3 cards. It's much more valuable for me to draw an extra 3 cards than it is for me to deal like 12 damage this turn. Generally speaking. Seeing Red Plus, they're taunting me. That Dark Embrace I didn't take would have been so good. I took a Flame Barrier over it. Oh, my deck would be so sweet. It's okay. My deck's pretty sweet anyway, right? Okay. So, 1 awaken, 1 fight, and then we are done with this run. That is an awful, awful lot of defense. It's not that unexpected, given that I've been removing my attacks from my deck at every chance that I can. The reason for that, of course, is that Dropkick deals infinite damage, so why would I need attacks? I can just leave these cultists alive, which is what I'm going to do. You don't need to kill them, they're coded as minions, so when you kill the awakened one, they all run away. Would be a good time to have offering, actually. Yeah. Works fine not to as well. All right. So thank you for watching this run with me. I hope it was enjoyable and perhaps a little bit instructive. I'm definitely going to make more than one video like this. I don't know if I'm going to, like, even if I win every run, it's 84 runs to get all 4 characters to Ascension 20. I don't know if I'm going to do that. I don't know. Probably not, honestly. But I'll definitely make more videos like this. And if you want to see those, they'll all be in a playlist, How to Win at Slay the Spire. Yeah, thank you for joining me for the first one. This one's all but over. If you want to check out my other content, it's generally angled more at people who are familiar with the game and perhaps already playing at Ascension 20 themselves. A lot of people enjoy just watching and like relaxing and winding down in the evenings, but generally speaking, I like won't be explaining as much of what's going on in the runs and stuff like that. You can find me live on Twitch at twitch.tv/Jorbs, and then I have daily YouTube uploads of runs like that on the YouTube channel that you're currently watching, so feel free to do that. Hope you're having an awesome year. The year is currently 2022. What a number. What a run. You might be curious what mods I'm using. These are mods that are used for displaying the stats of the relics to my Twitch viewers. So if you're watching on Twitch, you can mouse over a relic and it will actually tell you what the relic is. And then also if you like mouse over Pocket Watch, it has some stats on what it's done for the run. So that's kind of cool. But otherwise, the game is exactly the same as what you're used to playing with no mods. Patch 2.3, which I think isn't available on mobile yet, but doesn't make too many tremendous changes. I don't think it really changes much at all. All right, the run came in an hour, 2 minutes, and 23 seconds. Thank you for watching. You can see the seed up here if you want to try to play it as a seeded run yourself, although it's like an Ironclad run with no unlocks, so I don't know if that will really work. We have unlocked Ascension, we have unlocked, looks like one set of unlocks, Heavy Blade, Spot Weakness, and Limit Break, so now we can do strength stuff. More strength stuff, I guess. I guess we had an Inflame and Demon form offered to us already in that last run. So that's cool. Those will be there next time. And we've unlocked Silent, who I will be checking out. I'm actually going to record the next video right now. Thanks for tuning in.